Hi guys and girls, as promised I'm back at the Carl Science Studio in Northgate in Century City, Cape Town, and today I'm going to start my club fitting process with Christo. So he's going to take us through the different steps and talk us through the process as well, so that we can all gain a better understanding as to how this process can help us improve our game. So this is my bag that I'm going to present to Christo in a short while. I'd like to call it my weapons of mass destruction, but it's more like weapons of mass frustration right now. I've got a bit of a mixed bag, but predominantly I've got the set of Nike VRS coverts, a semi-blade setup, which has been working really well for me. And I've got the Nike wedges as well. And this is my trusty TaylorMade burner 5 wood that I've been using since I've started playing. And while I've changed many other clubs, I haven't changed this because it just feels so good. This is not the one that I'm using right now. This is my 3 wood, which is the Callaway Rogue. But I think I've got the wrong shaft in here, which Christo will hopefully tell me about a bit later. And then I've also got the Rogue driver with a bit of lead tape that I spoke about in our first interview. So we'll see how much of help that lead tape has been. And then I've got the Tank 7 Odyssey putter. So yeah, let's see whether this is helping me or working against me.
We're going to start off with just discussing you, finding out what your needs and requirements are. Because at the end of the day, do you want to be the next Bryson DeChambeau that hits a ball a million miles, or do you just want to be the next Kevin Kisner that's deadly accurate? Playing off a 16.5 at the moment. What is your best ever handicap?
11.3, 11.1 actually. So the reason why my handicap went up is 2 factors. I had a swing change with Coach Yusuf,
yeah,
and he indicated that because I have to unlearn the bad habits, it's probably going to impact my scores, which it did. But that was compounded by playing a lot of rounds in the wind recently, so that exacerbated the miss-hits, you know. So it went up, but now I can confidently say that it's starting to come down. The last 2 games, my handicap is starting to drop.
Obviously now you're the guy that no one likes at the club, shooting high 70s
I shot my best round the other day, 83 at Atlantic Beach, so I'm super excited about it. I improved my personal previous best by 2 strokes, and to do it at Atlantic was especially exciting for me.
Yeah, because it's not the easiest course, especially in the wind.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm hoping to get back to where I was at 11 fairly soon.
Okay.
And then the ultimate goal is to get to a 5 handicap. So
once we sort your clubs out, I'm sure we can achieve it. Well, hopefully. I don't know what you do yet, so we at Golf Science, we completely brand agnostic, so we just want the best for you. And if the best for you is a set of Cobra irons, a set of TaylorMade irons, or a set of Wishon irons, which is an American fortune company, which is very small, at the end of the day, I just want the best for you. All right?
And that is so amazing, because when you go to most retail stores, they own some of the brands, or most of the brands there. Exactly. So they're giving you a biased opinion
and what they get the most kickback of, right? We don't get any kickback of any brand. So in fact, we've been offered kickbacks and we just said no, thank you. Like we don't want to be associated with a single brand. We want to be open to all brands. Just end of the day, suit you with what works best for you.
Fantastic. So guys, you know, when you come here, guys and girls, when you come here, you're not going to be force-fed a particular brand. You're going to get something that is going to be right for you, regardless of who owns or where that brand comes from.
And then I generally take it a step further and say, okay, well, my background's engineering, not sales. So for me, it's about the data. So against what I've been taught, you know, you need to give a few options in terms of a lower price, a mid price, and a high price. I always go, let's go, what's the best? What's the best option for you? May that be the most expensive or the cheapest, doesn't matter. And then how do we work towards that? And if that's outside the budget, then we work and see what we can do to save a little bit of money in terms of, you know, the 3-wood shaft, or the clubs you use a little bit less, but still within spec, not something out of spec. I would never do that. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to spec your clubs a bit and see what they do relative to what they say. So what we do is we spec it and see exactly where it plays. And thereafter, we say, okay, cool, this is what your clubs do. Let's see what you do. Let's see what your swing tells us. And after some swing analogy, we'll say, okay, well, currently you're in a mid-launching, mid-spinning shaft, which this is, but you might need a lower-launching, lower-spinning shaft. Okay, so that is step 1. And we'll do the same with the 7-iron. The reason we use a drive in the 7-iron is simply just because it's sort of in the middle of the bag. The driver we can then tune down into your woods and your hybrids, and the 7-iron we can work up and down into your wedges and into your long iron. Okay, so what we're going to do we're just going to spec this. We're going to start with the loft and lie, and we're going to say, okay, well, this is a loft, this is a lie, what do we want? Now, in your lie angle, you want your grooves to be parallel to the floor impact. You don't want it to be like this or this. Because what happens when it goes in the ground like this, your club actually closes on you and the ball will go left, and vice versa. Now what happens over time is you unconsciously start swinging in a different plane to try to offset that. So then a lot of the time people go into the ground like this, which will send the ball to the right, but then they start missing left because they're actually coming over the top and trying to offset that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to...
That's also an important thing to consider,
Yeah.
that having the incorrect club setup will impact your swing. Because
Yes.
you will subconsciously change your swing to accommodate for
And
this.
then what happens, you go to a coach, you go through a whole swing change, you go up 5 handicap points because you're trying to replicate this in your swing, but in reality it was your club. And it's much easier to change your clubs than your swing. Always say you don't. Then when we look at the loft, what you want out of the loft is you just want a consistent gap for the bag. You've only got 13 clubs in your bag, it's obviously excluding the putter. You want to maximize that to have a club for every distance. Okay, and then the same counts with the driver. The driver, we still have loft, we still have lie, but then we also have something that's called face angle. And face angle essentially is when I put the driver down, how square relative to the target is that face sitting? Is it sitting closed? Is it sitting open? Or in this case, I can see the driver sitting a bit open, but you also have it in the D-1 setting. Now here's the key thing. What does this settings mean? In terms of marketing, we learn that they say they change the loft, but the catch is it doesn't actually change the true loft. It only changes what's called perceived loft. So what happens is now you've got it in an 8-degree setting, but it's a 9-degree head. This 9-degree is not now turned down to 8-degree. The only thing that changes is your perceived loft, so the face is now more open. Okay, so you see less of that face. So your face angle has changed more open, and the same counts if you go into high loft, it actually just closes your face. Right. Now the key thing here is that your true loft will only ever change, your dynamic loft will only ever change if you then now manually go and close the face at address. But you don't want to do that because if you swing at about 100 miles an hour, you're looking at about 2.5 degrees of face angle before you miss a fairway. So 100 miles an hour is pretty average for the average male. And if you look at 2.5 degrees, I mean, it's a difference between that and that. So if you now manually try and manipulate it and you get it a little bit wrong, you're going to miss the fairway. Okay, so what do? We get the head in the right loft, so we hand select heads at the right loft, knowing. So this one says it's 9 degrees, we'll measure it now and see exactly where it plays, but it's looking closer to about 10.5, 11 degrees, but we'll measure it now and see. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, well, you need 10 degrees of true loft. I'm not going to buy a 10 degree head because I know that 10 degree will probably play a little bit higher. We'll hand select one that says 9 but plays at 10. Okay, and then we set that face angle to the right setting. And at any point in that process, it's not at the right spec, I'll send it back and I'll get another one. Okay, effectively hand selecting here at the perfect setup. So what we found is I had to pull some more clubs out because the logo is a bit done. But it's a Nippon NS Pro 1050 GH, and it says it's a Stifflex. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to spec it and see if it really does just that. Okay, so let's start by measuring the loft and lie on this club. Let's not start with that because Brendan is busy measuring as well. As you can see, it's a bit chaos.
We had a functional workshop right here. Chris is taking me into his ordinary day. So this is not a setup, it's not a skit or anything. We're going through the proper process just like any other client would. And Brendan is super busy since I've gotten here.
So you can actually get a shot there. So what Brendan's currently doing is bending the client's clubs to his specification. So every single iron that goes through our doors undergoes the process. Every single wood gets hand selected. So he's actually busy bending the loft there. If I remember correctly, that set of irons is actually bending slightly weaker because the client hits it relatively low with low spin, but he really wanted those heads and they were super strong lofted. So we're just bending them weaker so that it will be more suited for the client. Okay, so let's quickly measure this one. So what we're effectively looking for is we just want to measure the loft and lie. Now we compare this to standard, and when we say standard, we don't mean Nike standard, we mean golf standard. And the reason we compare it to golf standard because you might have Nike irons, but you've got a TaylorMade 7 iron, and we want to get everything to the same spec. All right. So starting with the lie angle, we get the grooves of the score lines parallel to the edge of the table, and therefore we can see that the lie angle is playing at 64. Now a standard 7 iron plays at 62, a standard 8 iron will play at 63, so if we compare this to a standard 8 iron, this will be 1 degree up out of standard.
Can you turn the club to show the viewers how your club should be at address?
Not at address, at impact.
At impact.
Because at address, the club can sit like this, the club can sit like this, but in reality, at impact, you're going to be at a slightly different location. Okay. So for me, I don't care where it sits at address, as long as at impact, it's parallel. Okay. Let me show you a quick trick. So when we do the line angle test later, we're going to find out what the recommended line angle for you would be. But if you look at it this way, if that's a straight shot, okay, but at impact you are 4 degrees more upright than this, then you're looking at something like this at impact. So the ball will come off more to the right and add its spin to the right. So what you do as a golfer, you start coming more over the top to try and offset that. And the same counts for the other way. If you do it the other way, you see that as well. Now this is actually the worst way of missing it because it just multiplies the errors in it. If you are 2 degrees off towards the flat side, you need to be more flat. The ball just goes way more left than it would to the right. However, you always want to be nice and parallel and straight. Exactly. Okay. So now that we've got the line angle, let's measure the loft. Loft is very simple. I get the grooves nice and in line with the lines on here, and then we just in the middle of the face measure the loft, and we can see that's playing at 35 degrees. So all I did there, very simple, is I just did that for the viewers. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's so that will then play at 35 degrees.
And how far on is that towards?
So a standard 8-iron plays at 38. This is at 35. A standard 7 plays at 34. So it's 1 degree off a 7-iron. So it's effectively a stronger loft at 8-iron, and that's the reason why we're using it, because it's almost playing at a standard 7. Now what happens is the manufacturers always make their clubs, not all of them, but a lot of the game improvement clubs, they make them stronger lofted to promote more distance. You'll hit this so long and it'll be the best club in the world. It's not the best club in the world, it's just stronger lofted. Effectively hitting a 6-iron but with a 7-iron logo. Okay, now the two key things about that is the number is just identification. It could be A, B, C, D, E, F. You could give it your ex-girlfriend names if you want. But at the end of the day, this will just be an identification to which club it is.
Having a bag of 14 ex-girlfriends might be problematic.
Yeah, for your current girlfriend or wife, yes. So, but then what we then do is we get that right to what you require. Because what happens now, when it's strong lofted, when the 7-iron is playing in a 6-iron loft, it creates a big gap with your lower irons. And at the end of the day, if you're playing Cape Town, you're taking control of your short game a lot, because our courses isn't that long. So you want to have a club for a nice distance between. With respect to driver, we can see, I'll do this one a bit quicker. See, I chat a lot, so I'm never on time.
Well, that's good for the viewers because they get detailed insights into what this process is about.
Exactly. All right, so what we do here, very simple, is I got those lines parallel again, and we can see the line goes playing at around about 60. However, this time I don't really care about the line goal, because with the driver, you don't have turf interaction. The turf is not going to make the driver go left or right. All right? Thereafter, we get the driver into what's called a seated position. So when you go down, you can see that there's 2 touch points on the driver. Okay? Now, that's how the driver will sit behind the ball. You want to let the driver lie naturally, grip it and rip it. You don't want the driver to manipulate it while being on the ground. All right. From here we can see your face angle is about 1.5 degrees open. Okay, so you can see that face is slightly open. Now remember we said at 100 miles an hour there's about 2.5 degrees of tolerance. So now what happens if your face is already 1.5 degrees open, you now need to try and offset that, try and get the ball straighter. Now if you hit a massive hook, 1.5 degrees are perfectly fine. But if you don't, then you might need to have a squarer face. All right. Then if we look at the loft in the middle of the face, now remember we said this is a 9-degree head. What is a true loft playing at? Very simple. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the middle of that X, we can see that the true loft is playing at around about 10.25 degrees.
That's what you said earlier.
Okay. Yeah, I was going more towards 11, so my eye was a little bit out, but it's just over 10. It's not playing at 9. Okay. Now, in theory, you would think, okay, well, you've moved it down to 8 degrees, right? But you didn't. You only really opened the face, and the true loft is still the same. So if I take that setting and I move it over onto +2, only thing that's going to happen is your face angle is going to go more shut. And in that same seated position, the measurement in the loft will be exactly the same. So your true loft never changes.
You guys are really getting some great insight into the process behind the scenes now, because he's literally walking us through, once they do the measurements of each club, how it goes through the process in the workshop. And otherwise, you won't get to see this because you drop it, you have your assessment, and they do all of these things behind the scenes. So we are up in the golf science workshop right now. This is where Brendan does all of his magic. And there are different workstations all around us where they test for different things like the flex in your shaft, the length of your shaft, and all of those things. So Chris is going to talk us through that. He's just setting up the equipment right now. It's load shedding in Cape Town, stage 6, can you believe it? So they need to create a bit of magic to make sure that they are always up and running. So that's something that the viewers can be rest assured of. that even through load shedding, they will be able to assist you.
The first thing I wanted to show you was swing weight. Now, with swing weights, it's on this measuring device, and I'm not going to be able to show you the exact reading we get because of load shedding. This is a machine we don't use that frequently. Even though for the viewers that know a little bit about golf, they always think swing weights everything in terms of measuring the weight of a golf club. But we use it sometimes as a reference, but we focus mostly on moments of inertia. Okay? And why is that? That's very simple. When we look at how the swing weight machine works, it's a very simple machine. It says 14 inches from the fulcrum. How heavy is a golf club this side relative to this side? Now, if I ever told you, let's measure a golf club's weight, you'd think you're just measuring the absolute weight. You're standing on a scale and you're going, oh, this is 500 grams. That's not the case. It's measured this side relative to this side.
Okay.
And the idea behind that was to get the feel of the golf club right. Okay? But it's a little bit problematic from a club building perspective. And the reason for that's very simple. Because it's relative this side to this side, you can have 10 grams relative to 100 grams or 10 kilograms relative to 100 kilograms, but try swinging a 100 kilogram club. It's not that easy, right? The second problem is, now because it's relative, if this club was built fraction too heavy, you can almost cheat the system.
That's me. All right, go ahead.
So because it's relative, this side to this side, what happens now is if they build this golf club too heavy, they can almost cheat the system by making it lighter by just adding weight this side. Because now it will be lighter relatively.
Especially people who tape up the grip.
Exactly. Now what people do then is because there's more weight this side, now they add more weight this side to offset that again, and you just end up with so much extra weight. And you know what the biggest problem is? Especially older gentlemen that struggles a little bit with arthritis. Because you're struggling with arthritis, you tend to make a grip thicker. When with extra thickness comes extra weight, and then additional extra weight to the other side as well, which you don't want. Okay.
And do you always have to offset the weight that you add? So if you're adding to the bottom as you add to the top and vice versa?
That's what they will do with swing weight. Because you aim for a number. So you've got A, B, C, D, E, F, and D2 is considered as main standard. So a lot of manufacturers just build to D2 or D3. But the problem with just building to that is that club that weighs a shaft that weighs 80 grams versus a shaft that weighs 120 grams is going to have a completely different head weight feel at the same swing weight. But not just that, if you look through your whole set, if you build from your pitching ratio to your forehand all at D2, as the club gets longer, it actually becomes heavier at the same swing weight, therefore making a longer iron more difficult to hit. Now combine the heavier forehand with a strong lofted forehand, it becomes almost impossible to hit. So why does a lot of people just knock out? They don't have forehands anymore, because the 5 irons are effectively playing at a forehand loft, plus it's already heavy. Right, so that is swing weight. Now what we say, okay, cool, swing weight's great, we'll look at it, make sure it's not playing at an absurd number, but we focus mostly on moment of inertia. Now what is moment of inertia? Very simple. Swing weight's measured like this, but you don't swing a golf club like this, you swing it like this, and this is what we want to say, how difficult is it to put this club in motion, called moment of inertia. Alright, and this is on this scale over here. Now, oh, it's on, that's great. Okay, so very simple. How this works is, excuse the mess, we are extremely busy. So this machine tells me how difficult it is to put this club in motion in this plane. And this replicates that swing plane. Alright? And then we can see this club takes 2,660 kilograms square centimeter to put in motion. Now what's quite cool about that is before we had this side relative to this side, when now we actually have something that's measured in weight / length. Effectively, if I make it longer, it becomes heavier. If I make it shorter, it becomes lighter. Where there, it's if I make it longer, it becomes heavier. If I make it shorter, it becomes lighter. But if I now add weight to this side, it actually becomes lighter. Where if I add weight at any point in this machine, it will become heavier. Okay, and then what we do with this number is we say, okay, cool, well, what weight do you feel most comfortable? So during the assessment today, we're going to be hitting clubs, and we're going to add weights, take weights away, add weight, and we got to the point where you go, okay, this feels the most comfortable, and we can see in the data that this is the best sort of setup. And then we'll come upstairs, measure the moment of inertia, and then when we go through the build process, Brendan will actually build your club to that exact same weight. So that weight that you had in the fitting, you'll have afterwards in your clubs as well. And then we guarantee that it works again.
It's quite intricate and intense in terms of the detail that goes into club building. So it's much more complicated than what I anticipated it to be. So
exactly. And if you look at it, so this club is currently playing at 2,660, right? So let's say we were aiming for 2,700. We will then match it to a point of 10 points from one another, which is almost neglectable. So if I give you a 7 iron, I give you a 4 iron, I give you a pitching range, you feel exactly the same in the swing. One won't feel heavier than the next.
So is that a similar feel to what Bryson does with the same length shaft?
Yes, so exactly the same. So Bryson will take one length clubs all the way through, and all the clubs will be exactly the same weight, replicating the same swing the whole time, right?
And what's the benefit of that?
So with Bryson, it's fantastic because he's got a lot of speed. But the problem for the average golfer is we don't have all that speed. So the only way you can differentiate between a 4-iron and a wedge in terms of distance is by loft, for Bryson's case, but then we add the additional length. Because as the club becomes longer, you swing a little bit faster. So therefore, our loft doesn't need to be as aggressively shifted between clubs as Bryson.
So you achieve the same result without having to have the same length shaft, but you're manipulating weight.
Yes, exactly. And therefore, because the weight's the same through the set, every club will feel the same. You don't need 7 different swings for 7 different clubs. You can replicate that same swing for ours. Okay. We always say, if I close your eyes and I give you an iron and I say what iron you're hitting, you won't be able to tell me because it will feel the same as the next one.
And that's a new concept to me, to be honest, you know, because I always thought that each club needs to have a different weighting so that, you know, because your swings are a little bit different in terms of power to put through it. But if you have a consistent weight throughout, you can apply your energy consistently.
Exactly. And how can you be consistent if you need to make up 14 different swings?
True.
It's like impossible. All right. So that's in terms of what we do in weight. Now let's look at the flex. Now these shafts they were saying,
Stiff.
they were playing it stiff. Let's see. All right. So we go over to this side. So what we're going to do firstly is we're just going to measure the length. Now, how does it compare to standard length? Now, standard 7-iron plays is 37 inches.
Are we at 8 here now, eh?
Yes, this is 8. Okay, so if I say 7 a lot today, just remember, because clearly we do a 7-iron, so my brain is not
That will
right
teach
to
me to lose my 7
So
iron.
what we do in terms of an 8-iron standard length is 36.5 inches. Okay, there's a half an inch gap between each club. And with standard, I don't say female, male, old, young, standard. It's all the same. All right, we always build it to one same standard. All right, we're not sexist at all. All right, looking at the length, this we see where this 8-iron plays. So 36.5 is standard. This 8-iron plays at, so if you come look here, this is where it gets interesting. You'll see the total length will be 36.5. However, the shaft will stop somewhere by that last white line because the last bit's just butt cap. We don't want to grip it over the butt cap. We want shaft length. Therefore, this club will play at 36.25 inches. Okay, so it's a 1/4 inch shorter than standard. All right, so that's 36.25. Now, if we look at the driver, this is where things become interesting. Because based off a standard wrist to floor, a standard driver plays at 44.5 inches. All right. However, if you measure this, you'll see that this will come in quite a bit longer than a standard driver. It will come in at 45.5 inches, and that's the standard length for Callaway, Titleist, TaylorMade, some clubs.
So an inch longer.
An inch longer than standard. Okay. Now, why is it an inch longer than standard? Very simple. Some while ago, they've reached the limit of how fast the ball can come to face. So what they've done is made the club longer so you can swing it faster and therefore get more distance. And then the ball became inconsistent. So what did they do? They made the heads more forgiving. But what we found is a lot of guys actually lose club head speed with a longer club. And also because it's longer, that face takes longer to close. So the closure rate is slower. Therefore, you start missing more and more right. So what do you do then to offset that? You go a little bit shorter and also see if the guy's losing club head speed. So we'll start off at 45 inches or 44.5 as standard. So I generally like to give you that half an inch just because, and then see how that works. And if we find then that you start losing it to the right, or you start getting consistent, then I go shorter. But keeping in mind the club head speed and what you want. You said you want accuracy and feel. So in your case, we would give you accuracy by shortening your driver. But I'm never going to let go of a lot of distance. I don't want you to hit the ball shorter.
And some people are averse to shortening their club because it feels like maybe they're going to lose some distance because they're shortening it. And that is not true from what I've
No, so my favorite story is I had a guy come through my doors about a week and a half ago. His driver was at 46.25 inches, which is no longer than the limit, but the limit's at 46. And after hitting it, I did okay, and then we put him into something that's a little bit better spec. And that shaft was playing at 44.5 inches, so a whole inch and a half shorter. He gained 3 miles an hour club head speed.
Wow.
Why? Because he felt more comfortable swinging that shorter club. He didn't feel comfortable swinging that super long.
And I guess also from a practical perspective, there's less club to travel to get to the ball.
Yeah, exactly. But the opposite also counts. The longer sometimes make you hit it harder, right?
True.
So I personally like a longer driver just because from a young age I've liked having a big extension, and the longer club just makes me feel like I'm doing that. He's actually busy stripping my driver to give someone else my tip. Sad, but it's okay. So the length is a very, I won't say it's just personal, because we need to get the length right and then get used to it. And if it's something you don't like, then we start tweaking it.
And then again, the shaft can also be matched to your swing because some people have very limited mobility. So
Yeah.
me, for example, I struggle to get a big turn, and that might mean that I need a shorter shaft to get the maximum out of that turn.
Exactly. And then we also look at the flex and the bend profile, which I'll explain a little bit later. Okay, so let's look at the flex. So this is called a digital frequency analyzer, and very simple how this machine works is we're going to put the shaft in here, and this machine with the lasers on the inside is going to measure at what frequency the shaft oscillates. Okay, and we measure it in something called CPM. And the reason we measure in CPM, that's simply is because our graph is a CPM, okay, which I'll show you guys downstairs. So what we're going to do here, very simple, I'm going to give it a small little twang, and then we're going to get an average here. So you can see that's 311, 312, 312, 312, 312, 312. So on average, 311.84, so 312, okay? Then what we'll do is we'll do the same with the driver, see what frequency the driver is playing at. Now, as you note, why am I putting this face forward in here? Okay, so I'm doing two things. I'm putting it face forward, and I'm also putting it at shaft length. Okay, the reason I'm putting shaft length is on our chart we're going to have length and frequency, and that will give us our flex. But I'm also putting it face forward because this is how the club will load and unload at impact. The club will load and unload in this plane at impact. Okay, now what I want you to do with this one, I want you to note when I push down on it, how the club comes back. Okay, so I'm going to give it a small little twang. Note how that club is now not going up and down anymore, but it's rather moving side to side. Yeah. Exactly. Now, why is it oscillating inconsistently like that? Very simple. I'm going to explain it now. So on average, we were at 244. Okay, now why is it oscillating side to side? So you think you've got a round shaft, and if you have a round object and you push it straight down, it's going to come straight back up. Okay, but the shaft's never perfectly round, it's always a little bit oval. And what happens then is if I push it down, now because there's one plane that's stiffer than the rest, the shaft's effectively seeking that stiffest plane and wants to load and unload according to that stiffest plane. Now you can see it kind of settles out there, which tells me that the spine is more or less there, and then it starts rotating again. So what we'll do now is very simple. We'll take that stiffest plane, move it face forward, so the club can always load and unload along that stiffest plane. All right? And what they did is they took a badly spined shaft, as bad as they've ever seen, tested in a robot that's 99% accurate, and found a 15% deviance left and 15% deviance right, tested as they rotated the shaft and did shots. So your shaft can be equally bad, and you can have up to a 15% deviance, okay, caused by that spine. So how do we fix that problem? Very simple. We go to this machine over here. This is called a shaft profiler, and all we do here is we put it in there, and this machine effectively it's for a few things. We use it mainly for spining, and what we do is I'll rotate this and actually see where the numbers are highest. You can also feel it, and as we find the highest number, I'll then draw a line. So you can see I drew a line there, so that's there. Now, what we do then, I draw a line, and when we glue it, we glue that line face forward, so the club will always load and unload according to that stiffest plane. I want you to feel this. So just take that shaft and just give it a 360 rotation from that butt section. Actually feel. So just rotate nice and slowly. Feel how it goes stiffer, 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 and then it almost releases. Now you're going to feel it stiffen up quite a bit because you're reaching the spine now, and it almost jump. See how that shaft almost jumps. So that's effectively, because the shaft's not perfectly round, it's a little bit oval, and that will be the stiffest plane.
Interesting.
And what that means is when you buy a set of clubs off the shelf, like these Cleveland wedges, they came with the shaft. See how the logo is back? It means it's not spine. Because no shaft will have the exact same spine. If I take a set of these shafts and I spine all of them, the logos will sit at a different spot for each shaft. Okay, so if you have a set of clubs and all this face or logo back, it means it's not spine.
And in terms of assistance adjusting that spine to the right position, how much value does it add to you?
So, like I said, they tested in the robot that's 100% accurate and found up to a 15% deviance left and a 15% deviance right.
So, if you get it on the right spot, you can eliminate that 15%.
Exactly.
Deviance. And let's say 15% is a lot on a fairway.
Exactly. But let's say it's not all the way 15. Let's say it's 7%. Okay. But now you've got 7% on the spine. Your flex, maybe let's say 3% up. Now we're at 10%. Let's say your weight's another 3% up. Now we're at 13%. And let's say your loft and lie that we measured at the bottom is another 3% up.
Jeez.
Now we're at what's it? 18, I lost track there, and you are, let's say, 22% inconsistent. Now we're at 40% inconsistent. So almost half the time, you are less consistent. So what we do, we make the club as consistent as possible, just leaving your inconsistencies. And as you play, your confidence is going to grow, so your consistency is going to shrink.
And so your half of your inconsistency could be attributed to your club setup.
Exactly. And sometimes more than half.
True.
All right. So Let's go downstairs and plot these on the chart and see exactly what flex they're playing at. So now that we've measured the frequency, we can actually see what flexor clubs are playing at. And how it works very simple is we've got this flex chart, and it's got the length, which we measure in inches, and then we've got the frequency or the flex, which is measured in lady, senior, regular stiff, flexor stiff. But now remember earlier I said we're not sexist.
Yeah.
We want the clubs to build to one standard, and that standard we call FM. And why we use FM, frequency modularity, is for two reasons. Firstly, we need to refer to, say, regular flex, or yours are not stiff flex. That's a better example. Stiff flex range from an FM of 5.0 to 5.9. So it's quite a big range. We want to get that a lot more spot on. We want to say you need to be at 5.3 flex because you're swinging at, say, 84 miles an hour. Okay, so we get that a lot more spot on. And secondly, when an older gentleman comes in, I don't want to tell him he needs a ladies flex just as much as I don't want to tell his wife she needs a men's flex. Okay, we want to say what's the FM you require. And that FM ranges all the way from 0 up to however far you want to go. The main flexes range from 1.5 to 8.0. Okay, so when you look at yours, we can see your 7 iron or 8 iron, sorry, plays at 36.25 inches at a frequency of 312. 312, 312, 312. There's 311 at 5.0. So 312 will be at 5.1. So it's saying it's playing at a stiff flex, and indeed it is. It's playing at the bottom end of stiff. Okay. Then when we look at your driver is playing at 45.5 inches at 244, 244, 244, 244. There's 247 at 6.0. So 244 will be at 5.8. Now,
That's closer to an extra stiff.
yes. Now this driver set is playing at a 6.5, which is in theory in the middle of extra stiff. It's actually playing at 5.8. It's actually playing at the top end of stiff. So it's playing softer than what it says. Okay. Now, what will happen if we had to measure your whole set? You'll find that the set will do something like this. It will deviate like this. And a lot of times when I measure lighter shafts, they come in like a full flex softer. Okay. Now, what we do is when we build your clubs, we build everything in line to the same flex. And then if you hit your driver exponentially harder than hit your irons, instead of a straight line, the line will be a little bit more like this.
Just for your driver.
Just for your woods, yeah. Okay, so a good example is my irons. So I swing my driver at about 120. We should be at 8.0, but I like it even stiffer. So my driver's playing at 9.0 and my irons are playing at 8.5. Okay, therefore it's the same step. A little bit stiffer in the driver and then softer in the irons. Okay. So that's the flex of your clubs. They're pretty close together. They're not as bad as I've measured. Okay. My favorite is when guys come in with an 80-gram steel shaft and then it plays at a ladies flex even though it says stiff. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's playing softer is the only way to get steel shafts lighter is to reduce the wall thickness. And as you reduce the wall thickness, it becomes more flexible. Absolutely. Okay, so it's very hard to get to a stiff flex when it's very light. So what we then do is we go lighter than 100 grams. I tend to lean towards graphite shaft because graphite you can go super stiff even though it's light. So my shaft is a good example of that. I've got 110 gram graphite shafts, but
just look at this.
If you had to look at them, what flex would you say they play at?
Well, this would be like a regular flex to me.
Okay, plays at a 9.0. That's a triple X flex.
And I can feel.
Yeah, it's very, very stiff. I mean, you can
it looks quite cool too.
It's got Kevlar there, so it stiffens it up quite a bit. So now that we know what your flex is, now that we know a bit more about your clubs, let's see what you do as a golfer. Okay, so we're going to start hitting some shots now. All right, you probably wondered if we're never going to hit
shots.
That's
the interesting part here.
It's very simple.
So show the camera.
So we can see here, if you look at your wear marks, you can see that there's quite a dark wear towards the toe, and then this is last shot. That last shot that you pull, you can see that was that one. So this was the rest. Now, if I had to take a big screenshot of this and this was flat all the way, the wear mark will actually be that big. But because the toe is going off, the wear mark's only that big. So what we call that dominant wear. And in the middle of that is what we call touchdown. All right. Now, what we see with touchdown, that's effectively where your club touches the ground at impact, which is currently like that. All right. Now, to show you, you can see your club currently touching the ground like that. You want your grooves to be parallel to the floor. Sure. And remember before we showed what happens when this, everything goes right.
That's why it goes.
Exactly. So let's measure. Right. So we can see it's touching down at about 71 degrees. And now what does that mean? Currently it's at 64 degrees, so that's another, 7 degrees that this club needs to bend. Now, the unfortunate about that is that there's not a lot of clubs out there that can bend that much. Generally, forged clubs bend about 4 to 5 degrees. So if we're looking at 7, it's quite a tough task to get to. So what we then do is we bend it as far as we can, because that will give you an optimal result.
Okay. Can get to.
Exactly. Brass is quite upright, but they build these clubs according to that. And if you look at major winners, most upright major winner was 10 degrees upright. The flattest major winner was 6 flat. Tiger was 6 flat. So we always go on about, our swing is not perfect. The pros swing at different lines as well.
But they've got tall bands that they can have to set up.
Or people like us, yeah.
Exactly.
So we always set it up right for you. Now what happens often is you end up buying cast iron clubs off the shelf, but cast iron clubs bend about half a degree. So you sit with 3, 4, 5 degrees, like those are never going to get there. That's where we look at forged clubs. And forged clubs aren't just low launching, low spinning. You get really high launching, high spinning forged clubs as well.
And it also gives us a different perspective as to how the pros remain as consistent as they are. Besides putting in the hard work, the equipment is set up to their spec.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite stories is I played Milton a while ago, league for Durbanville, and I had a 4-iron in one of the holes, into the wind. Fairway was obviously nice and hard, and I hit this 4-iron super fat. Now what will happen when you hit it fat, if the line goes wrong, the club is going to the ground and do this, right? But because my line angles are perfect, my club just went straight through the grass. Yes, I hit it fat, but that was a runner. And it literally ended up like 5 meters short of the green. So I only lost, yes, I still lost distance, but it went dead straight. I didn't end up right in the water.
A straight miss is better than a skew miss.
Exactly, especially when there's water on the right. Okay, so that's your line. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to analyze and see exactly what the right line for you would be. So we can write down here, the length is 36 and a quarter. The touchdown point was 71 degrees. Now, what will the optimal angle be? We don't know yet because we need to measure your wrist to floor. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to do 2 quick measurements. We're first going to measure your hand size to determine what size the grip's going to be. Then we're going to measure your wrist to floor, which will determine what length the club needs to be. And thereafter, we can see what the right line is. Okay, so let's start with the hands. Now here's an interesting story. If you look at a standard men's size, go like this, stretch your hand out. We're going to take it from the dominant wrist crease, flat down. You can see that's at 940. Longest finger will be at 950. That side as well. Standard men's size is 900. So if you buy a set of grips off the shelf, they're at 900, that's at 960. Let me just remeasure this hand again because it came out slightly smaller. Definitely. Okay, so your right hand is fractionally smaller than your left hand. Okay, so left hand is what we call 960, right hand is what we call 950. So what it means is we need to be at 960. Now what is 960? 960 is a standard mid-size grip. But the key here is that you can't just take a mid-size grip and put it on a golf club. Okay, you need to measure what's the core of the grip and what's the butt size of the shaft. Because what a lot of people do is they say, I need 2 layers under my under my grips. Okay, cool. But your driver shaft has got a 620 butt instead of a 600 butt. So obviously if you put 2 layers in the driver, it's going to end up thicker than the irons. So what we always do is we measure the butt, build it up to the right size of the butt, and then we look at the core size of the grip as well, because if the core is smaller, the grip will stretch. So therefore, every single club will be at exactly the same size. It will feel exactly the same. Now, how should yours feel? Very simple. Let's see if I've got a 960 on display here. This is an old worn grip. I like using the worn grips because it gives you a good perception. Now grip it as you would grip the golf club. Okay. Now what I want you to do, feel it's thicker. Okay. Nice. Remove the right hand. Just grip it with the left hand. If you look at your fingers here, see how they touch? They don't overlap. And the reason why they're touching is because this club is this perfect fit. Now hold it to the same pressure you would hold it with your golf club. Okay, without your right hand, just your left hand. Okay. Now if I do this, okay, grip it. Like you would, okay? If I do this, you feel how stable that is? Okay, now grip it all the way forward, same amount of pressure. Feel how you need to grip it harder for it not to twist. Now what happens there is when it's too small, your fingers actually overlap. And when it overlaps, the club twists much easier. So what do we do then? We hold on to it.
Down to it.
And then it starts going pear-shaped. Okay, so get the grips the right size, solves a lot of problems. Are only made to last 12 to 18 months.
Interesting.
The moment it starts showing a shine, if you look at your driver grip, it's showing a lot of shine, time to replace it. Long gone, like that is, some people play through the shine onto a new level of shine, and then, like, you know the thumbprints, and it's like, no. Like those have to replace.
Okay, so once the shine is there, it's time to go.
Okay, yeah, that's hand size. Let's measure wrist to floor. You stand in the middle of this block, face me. nice upright, let your arms hang naturally, look straight forward. What we're going to do here is we're just going to measure to where your dominant wrist crease comes on this little measuring plate. And once again, you can see your right arm, your left arm is slightly longer than your right arm. And in fact, both of them fall into standard length. So even though you are slightly taller than me, our club need to be the same length. Why? Because if we stand next to each other, you can see our hands are hanging at the exact same height. Okay, so what a lot of people think is that, oh, that guy is 9 meters tall, he needs a super long club. But just because he's 9 meters tall doesn't
If
mean
I
he's got
short
short
arms, I need long.
So you're at standard length, meaning that club that you've got there is a 14 inch short.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, I remember.
total length is right, but we're factoring out that butt cap, so shaft length, and that's 14 inch short. Meaning this club in the bag, so 30, okay, now this is where it gets interesting because it's 8 iron. 36 and a half is a standard 8 iron for you. But this club is playing at 36 and a quarter. So looking at length, what club will that allocate to? This will allocate to 8, 9 iron in terms of length. Okay, now bear with me. 8, 9 iron length, that would create a standard lie angle of 62, 63 and a half. So this will be if you had this club at this length, the standard would be 63 and a half. Now your touchdown is at 71, meaning we are at 7.5 degrees upright or standard. Okay, that's how we do the little sum. Even though that's not the right length, we just use that little equation, and that gives us at 7.5 upright or standard. Now, is that a lot? No. Is it maybe relative to standard, but it's not absurd. It's not the most I've ever seen. It's not the most I will ever see. So what we do then, we just bend the club more upright, and that will solve the problem.
You know, we used to bend it like Beckham for football. We can bend it like Crystal.
Here we go.
To get your clubs.
Bend it like Brendan, he's much stronger. Okay, so that's what we do with your clubs, getting them all at the right spec. And we always recommend bringing in your club once a year, doing a line work test, and just getting them back onto spec. Because two things happen: you change, and also you play Worcester and you play the rocks in the rough, and you hit a rock, line angles will change. Always good to check it.
So also, as you can see, as you've been through the process now, the right fix for you could be as simple as changing the lie angle. You know, your shaft could be the right shaft, your grip could be the right grip, but just because of the dynamics of your swing, the lie angle needs to be adjusted. But you will never know until you get fitted and find out exactly what is the right fit for you.
And I mean, the three main things of a golf club, I always say, is length of club, size of grip, lie angle. If you get those three wrong, you might as well not start. So here's the 8 shots that I said, give me your 8 base shots. And if you look at it, we can see here the plane in which they went, or the tracking, ball tracing, what do they call it? Ball tracking. This side we can see where pitched, we're looking at carry, and there you can see your striking. Now, if you look at the striking consistency, you strike it very consistently.
And just look at this. Don't look at the dispersion for now. Just see.
So what that tells me is that you're a consistent player. Okay. Then, looking at that, now remember earlier we said game improvement?
Yeah.
Okay, as a 16 handicapper, if you walk into a retail shop, what would they give you? They give you like a game improvement towards a player set of iron. I can give you a set of blades and you'll hit it the same amount of consistently. You'll be equally consistent with a set of blades. The only difference will be blades will spin less. So we'll looking at the rest of the data, we can start looking at cover speed. So you're swinging at an average of about 79 miles an hour. Now when we look in terms of flex, we can see that at 79 miles an hour, we're more or less at 4.5 flex, which is in the middle of regular. Currently our club is at stiff. Now what happens when your clubs are too stiff? Very simple. If this was a shaft, at impact this loads and unloads. When it's too stiff, the shaft just doesn't load and unload enough, leaving that face open slightly. And what happens then is we try and force it, and then the club just goes straight left. What do we want to improve on? We want to keep the launch more or less the same. We want to bring the spin up slightly, want to bring the landing angle up slightly. That'll give you a little bit more consistent, and then most but not most of all fix that line. Okay, now we know what we want to do, but how do we know what we're doing is right? So we look at 4 main things. We look at your strength, tempo, transition, and release, and we rank it from 1 to 3. It's not good or bad, just the way you play. Starting with strength. 1 strength is someone swinging at 60 miles an hour. 3 strength is someone swinging at 100 miles an hour. You swing at 80 miles an hour, so you've got a 2 strength. Okay, looking at tempo, more specifically downward tempo. So you get to the top of the screen, there. 1 tempo, I call it the guy that plays golf to get away from his wife. I probably shouldn't say that on camera, but it gets to the top and then it accelerates all the time. Okay, trying to steal as much time as possible. Okay, that's my joke. Alright, 2 tempo, early else, gets to the top nice and easy, and then accelerates through the ball, but it's all still looking easy. That's why it's called big easy. And then 3 tiger, which means off the sketch, so not going to straight because I'm going to probably pop my back out of position, but he swings off his feet. Okay. Now when you're looking at your swing, you've got this very easy back swing, and then from there you do accelerate visually. So I would say we're between a 2 and a 2.25. Okay, call it between the Ernie and the Louis staging if you want. Okay, in terms of tempo.
Good combination.
And then looking at weights, well, because you've got this easy tempo, we don't have to go super heavy. Because a lot of guys go, I need a 130 gram shaft, but why? Okay, you need a heavier shaft if you've got a very fast tempo. If you've got an easy tempo, you don't need that extra weight, because that extra weight just stabilizes the swing a little bit. So in your case, I would say 110 to 120 grams would be more than sufficient. And then looking at flex, we've already said we had a 4.5 flex. Okay, so this is summarize that 4.5 flex, medium firm profile with a 110 to 120, 110 to 120 grams shot. Even if we go 105, it would still be okay. Okay, in terms of head design, what sort of head design do we need? Definitely semi-blades and the shorter irons. We could look at potentially going to something a little bit bigger and longer irons to make it ease of striking, especially your 45. Because what you want to do at the end of the day is 28 degrees. Okay? But because you're working towards getting more on the inside and releasing a bit later, we'll probably go semi-blade all the way. If we look at transition and release, that's something we'll see in the video that I took of you. So very simple. There you are. Looking at transition, that is when you get to the top of your swing, how do you come down from there? Okay? Now one of the easiest ways I've determined to look at this is looking at your arms versus your hips movement. If your arms are doing all the work and your hips are not doing the work, then it's telling me that you've got a 1 transition. If you get to the top and your arms and your hips are working in unison as they do with you, you can see your arms are turning, but your hips are also turning, then we're at a 2 transition. And then last but not least, if your hips are turning aggressively and your arms are sort of lagging behind, then you're at a 3 transition. In your case, just an easy 2 transition. If we look at release, release is where this angle becomes more than 90 degrees. Now you can see you're already slightly more than 90, so our question is rather, where does it get more? Because it's already more than 90. All right, so a 1 release will be right there, a 2 release will be there, a 3 release will be there. Okay, so we're definitely not at a 3, definitely not at a 1, we're more towards a 2. As you can see, there that angle is pretty similar, and then there it starts increasing. So definitely at a 2. Okay, so what that tells us, when you look at your profile, 2 strings, 2 to 2.25 tempo, 2 transition and 2 release, what does it mean? Well, very simple what it means. Brendan, sorry, it's a client that walked in. Brendan will be right answer. So looking at that profile, what do we require? Now I'm going to show you this driver for 2 reasons. It's nice and flexible, it's also gold, so it keeps your attention. He's asked on the driver, just so you guys know. So the same comes with the irons. Now when you look at the driver, remember in our interview we spoke about bend profile. Now when you look at the driver, the irons, as you get to the top of the swing and you start transitioning, the first thing that happens here is the shaft loads, unloads, and the toe up. Okay? Then as you release, it loads and unloads in the face. Alright? That's why when we spoke about the spine, we build the face forward. Okay, now the key there is that the shaft doesn't just do this all the time in the same plane. It actually does it toe up and then the face plane. Right. Now, looking at that, the shaft is then divided into 3 segments called the bend profile. You've got the tip section, mid section, butt section. Each section can play at a different level of firmness in the flex. In other words, you can have a soft, medium, firm tip section, same with the mid, same with the butt, and any variant thereof. So if you do a little bit of math, you take a shaft that weighs 80 grams, it's the flex, you can have 243 variants of it. Why? Because it's 3 planes, or 3 sections, play at 5 different levels of the flex, so 3 to the power of 5. Okay, just 243. Okay, now when we look at that, we go, okay, well, let's take it a step further. What do you require? How does it influence the swing? Well, looking at the tip section, this speaks to the release. So the sooner you release, the less it's loads and unloads, the lower the ball fly. The later you release, the more it's loads and unloads, the higher the ball fly. In your case, we want a medium tip section. But because you are working towards getting more from the inside, what gets linked to that also a later release. So we might look at what a medium firm tip section will do just to future-proof it. If it doesn't hinder your game too much now, then it's perfectly fine. If it does, if we hit it now and we go, oh, it's not going to work, then we might go to medium firm instead of medium firm, but we'll future-proof it a little bit in that space. Medium section speaks to, or your midsection speaks to your concision. How aggressive are you from the top? If you're very aggressive from the top, the club's going to do this. You're not going to know where the head is. If you have a very easy concision, you're just not going to feel where the head is because it's too stiff. So we want something that's medium. You just want to be able to know where the head is, but it's not loose like this. And the butt section speaks to how the shaft feels apart before. So if I give you a shaft with a very soft butt section, the shaft will feel very flexible, and vice versa. Or very stiff, it will feel boring. Now this is where I always say I can manipulate the golfer into believing that the shaft is stiffer than it really is. So my dad's a good example. He used to swing it really fast, he used to hit it miles, and obviously as he's getting older he's doing club at speed. So I gave him a shaft with a firm butt section, so you can believe the club's not going to turn over too much because he hits a nice big hook. But even though the shaft's a little bit softer and flex, so that it will actually still get in the air because you're struggling with spin. Okay, in your case you've got a very easy tempo, so we just need a medium or a 2 butt section. Okay, so medium to medium firm. Something that will launch and spin the ball enough, feel nice and smooth, enough to let's look at what your options would be. So if we move over into the iron cupboards, we're going to look at what heads will work in terms of launch and spin characteristics, but we're also going to look at what heads will bend. Okay, so starting off with Callaway.
All right, after half a day's worth of fitting and testing and going through every brand under the sun, we've come to the conclusion that there are two that just felt absolutely fantastic in my hands and gave me the most consistent results as well. And going through the best option first, and that is the Callaway Rogue ST Max LS driver with 9 degrees of loft and the Callaway Apex Pro individual irons. My word, those irons felt so good. It's probably the best iron that I've hit ever. And even the miss hits felt decent, and it didn't give me crazy dispersion differences from better struck shots. The only thing is that those irons cost almost 30,000 Rand. So it's quite expensive. The other option that was available to me that felt really good is the Cobra or the King Cobra Forged Tech irons. Those also felt really good. The Callaway just felt that much better. And the Cobra irons is about 8,000 Rand cheaper than the Callaway. The wedges that were recommended is the Cleveland RTX Zip Core, all in mid bounce. And then when you factor in the shafts, so I've got the Acura Gen 3 FX 200 series shafts in the driver, the 3 wood and the 5 hybrid. It's a 50 gram weight in the driver, 75 gram in the 3 wood and 85 gram in the hybrid. And for the irons, it is the TWGT S2S red iron shafts in a stiff flex that would go into the irons as well as in the wedges. So in total, with all of the custom shafts for every club and the right driver, all of those things come to, in the Callaway setup, just under 76,000 Rand, and for the Cobra setup it comes into just under 68,000 Rand. So it is quite a steep investment into getting fully kitted into a bag that suits your swing. So I don't know, maybe I need another mortgage to make sure that I can get my hands onto the set that just felt so good. The other option, of course, is to bend my existing clubs as close to the right profile as possible and work with that, and then gradually build up the bag over time. So please let me know what you think about this the show, what you found most interesting in terms of the information that Christo shared. And I'd like to encourage you all to go through to Golf Science in Century City in Cape Town, pay them a visit, get fitted. And if you have your clubs bent instead of buying new clubs, it's only going to cost you 50 Rand per club. So it's a much more cost-effective option to get as close as possible to the right setup for your golf game. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to presenting the next show, which is going to be fantastic. I'm going to be interviewing Coach Yusuf Raiden from YR Golf Performance, and we are going to talk about the benefits and the myths of remote coaching. So look forward to that one. It's going to be exciting, and hopefully you find that one interesting too. Until next time, cheers.